If you've ever grumbled about the price of Starbucks coffee or a disappointing fast food burger, this video might just make you feel lucky. Today, we're diving into what people actually ate to survive during World War II. And some of these stories are absolutely insane. We live in a world where you can order a massive nugget combo from your phone and have it delivered in 20 minutes. But what if I told you that, 80 years ago, some people didn't even know if they'd eat that day? And when they did, well, let's just say the menu included bread mixed with sawdust and soup made of nothing. Yep, nothing soup is exactly what it sounds like. No exaggeration. Hunger during World War II was so extreme that it literally shaped the fate of entire nations. Some soldiers had ration packs that felt like luxury camping meals, while others had to choose between eating shoe leather or, much worse. If you thought the food rationing in the Hunger Games was cruel, just wait until you hear what went down in the real world. So strap in, because we're about to uncover a side of war that history books don't always tell you. Hey Discovers, real quick before we dive back in, I've got a small favor to ask. If you love historical curiosities, epic battles, crazy mysteries, and mind-blowing stories that most people don't know about, then hit that subscribe button right now. That way, you won't miss any of our new videos and can keep uncovering insane facts every week. And of course, smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow and brings you even more awesome content. Alright, let's jump back into history. When we picture wartime meals, we might imagine a steaming bowl of soup and roast meat served in a military camp. Well, that may have been true at the start of the war. But as the fighting dragged on, soldiers had to rely more and more on military rations. Here's the first surprise. Not all rations were terrible. Compared to a Sunday feast, they were awful, but for a battlefield setting, some troops actually ate quite well. But, as always, not everyone was so lucky. If you've ever complained about airplane food, imagine eating the same bland meal every single day, with zero variety and no seasoning. And if you didn't like it, tough luck. Your other option was starving in the middle of a war. So let's take a look at how different nations fed their troops. American soldiers were gastronomically privileged compared to most armies. Their rations, known as K rations and C rations, came in practical packages containing crackers, canned meat, chocolate bars, and instant coffee. And if you think wartime food didn't leave a legacy, think again. Spam. Yep, that sad-looking canned meat became an icon of World War II. U.S. soldiers ate so much Spam that they developed a love-hate relationship with it. Some adored it, while others traded their cans with allies, or even enemies, just to get something different. The problem? The food was nutritious but insanely repetitive. Imagine eating the same breakfast, lunch, and dinner for months. The result? Soldiers developed their own trench cuisine techniques, mixing ingredients or making trades to spice things up. If you've played Call of Duty, World War II, you've probably seen details of military rations. And for those who've watched Band of Brothers, it's clear that the Americans had way more food resources than their enemies. But speaking of enemies, at the beginning of the war, German soldiers ate relatively well. They received rye bread, salted meat, and potato soup, which was decent for an army on the move. The problem? As the war dragged on, Nazi supply lines collapsed. On the Eastern Front, for example, thousands of German soldiers simply didn't have enough food to survive the brutal Russian winter. If you've ever gotten impatient waiting for late food delivery, imagine waiting weeks for supplies in freezing temperatures, and they never arrive. Documentaries about the Battle of Stalingrad show scenes of German troops eating moldy bread and rotten meat because there was nothing else left. Hunger became one of the most effective weapons against the Nazi army. If there was one army that suffered the most from food shortages, it was the Japanese. While American troops had canned meat and chocolate, Japanese soldiers survived on minimal portions of dried rice and fermented vegetables. Protein, almost non-existent. The problem? The food situation was so severe that many Japanese soldiers became skeletal and sick. But the worst cases happened on isolated Pacific islands, where some troops were completely cut off from supplies. What happened? Documented cases of cannibalism. Yes, you read that right. Starvation drove some soldiers to eat human flesh. The movie Letters from Iwo Jima portrays the extreme hunger suffered by Japanese troops. And if you enjoy survival horror games, Think of them as a real-life version of resource scarcity mechanics, except with no weapons, no ammo, and no food. Food in concentration camps. A brutal reality. If you thought soldiers had it rough when it came to food, brace yourself. In concentration camps, food wasn't just scarce, it was a tool for torture. The Nazis didn't just want to imprison their enemies. They wanted them to die slowly. And one of the most calculated, cruel, and inhumane ways they did this was by strictly controlling how many calories a prisoner could consume without immediately dropping dead. Sounds insane. It was. If you've ever complained about a bland, watery soup, imagine a broth made of hot water and pure despair. What prisoners received in concentration camps wasn't real food. It was starvation disguised as meals. What was on the menu? A nearly transparent soup, with nothing but scraps of rotten vegetables or boiled bones stripped of any remaining nutrients. Bread mixed with sawdust or ground-up paper to bulk it up. Yep, they were basically eating wood. A barley-based coffee that had no coffee at all, just a warm, brown liquid meant to trick the stomach into thinking it was full. Some of the effects of starvation were: prisoners lost weight at an alarming rate until they were just skin and bones. Their bodies began shutting down, lacking the energy to even perform basic functions. Many collapsed from exhaustion and died while working, because, yes, they were still forced to do labor under these conditions. If you've ever watched The Pianist, you'll remember the scene where the main character desperately searches for food crumbs on the floor. That's a painfully accurate depiction of the extreme hunger faced by prisoners. The same goes for the boy in the striped pajamas, which gives a powerful glimpse into the horrific conditions of the camps. But if you think this was the worst case of starvation in World War II, wait until we talk about the siege of Leningrad. Imagine being trapped inside a city for 900 days, with no supplies coming in and the enemy completely surrounding you. That's exactly what happened to the people of Leningrad, now St. Petersburg, USSR, between 1941 and 1944. The situation was: the Nazis cut off all food and medical supplies to the city. The brutal Russian winter hit, and people started dying from cold and starvation. There was nothing to eat. What did people do to survive? Wallpaper glue. They boiled it to extract the starch, trying to turn it into something vaguely edible. Leather shoes, cooked until soft enough to chew and swallow. Cannibalism. When there's no other option, hunger takes over. If you've ever opened your fridge and thought, ugh, there's nothing to eat, imagine opening your pantry and seeing only wallpaper paste. The siege of Leningrad was one of the most horrific events of World War II. The starvation was so severe that some survivors said they envied those who had already died. There are documentaries, books, and first-hand accounts that paint a terrifying picture of just how devastating it was. World War II was one of the darkest chapters in history, and it wasn't just because of battles and bombs. Starvation was one of the deadliest weapons. While some soldiers had factory-produced rations, boring but nutritious, others died of hunger on the front lines when supplies failed to arrive. While civilians struggled with severe rationing, concentration camp prisoners were deliberately starved, left to survive on sawdust bread and flavorless soup. Food, or the lack of it, shaped the war. Armies were defeated because their troops were starving. Entire cities crumbled under hunger, not just enemy fire. And the scariest part? This wasn't an isolated event. Starvation has been used as a weapon before and after World War II, in conflicts all over the world. And even today, while we can get food delivered to our doorsteps in minutes, millions of people still suffer from hunger. Which of these stories shocked you the most? Do you think you could survive on these diets? Drop your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more historical deep dives. See you next time.